Hello developers, what is going on? Welcome to my walkthrough of my Unity Junior programming pathway project. Some things to preface before we get right into this. I took way longer than the average dev should have on this project. I took a month and a half to make everything you see here. And there's even stuff from the Unity Assets store here, so it's not entirely mine. Like the castle or the night model you see right there. Oop, let me just kind of turn this down. I ended up just kind of getting caught up in developing, and I eventually hit my personal due date of a month and a half. So here's the product after all this time. Do also keep in mind I have been using Unity for a decent amount of time, a couple years-ish, and this isn't my first project, so please don't feel like you need to put as much effort to make your project look like this or function like this. I just did it because I got so into everything and I ended up enjoying every hour of it. Some of you might ask, why did I even make this project? It looks really overkill. First of all, obviously because I want to finish the last step of the pathway. But more importantly, I kind of wanted to start an FPS game project. And what better excuse other than to make it for my final pathway assignment. And also, it's kind of becoming a fairly decent portfolio piece. If I decide to put it on there, I might have potential plans to maybe think about multiplayer. I do have a design cooking up for that, maybe. It is complicated after all, though. And on top of that, I do plan to continue on the creative core pathway to see how else I could improve this piece. Maybe make some more levels for this as well. If you want to play, I'll include a link to the Unity Play/itch.io, maybe, link to the current build, which has a tutorial and a first level that you see here. Also, unfortunately, the code for this will be private. I'm sorry about that. I did put a decent amount of work into this project, and I don't really feel comfortable spilling it all for the internet to see at the moment. I know the code is nothing special, but to me it's special. So once again, sorry about that. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So the gameplay, as you can kind of see, you've got enemies spawning from this enemy castle, and they're marching towards yours. If they march towards yours, your castle starts losing health. And basically, you want the first castle to be brought down loses, and you want to bring them down. You've got different variety of weapons, such as you've got the rocket launcher, got the pistol, which both of them have a little bit of screen shake. And lastly, the most important one is this thing called a trebuchet. What it does, it's a medieval weapon, and what it does is it launches a projectile. They say fairly simple physics, but physics using a counterweight and a fulcrum, and it looks like this. Pretty cool. So anyways, that's the basic gameplay. I also have a tutorial sequence, which I'm pretty proud of. So there's a whole dialogue system. You can progress that dialogue, as well as some sort of conditional progression. In this case, it's checking for player movement, as well as player looking. So I'm proud of this. There's some conditional stuff right here, like conditional dialogue, and I know it's pretty bare bones. You're just gonna have to deal with the gray box version of that, unfortunately. You can fall off the map if you want, don't worry, the game deals with that. Anyways, enough of that. Let's go ahead and get right into the code. There's 4 parts: inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, abstraction in all of these scripts, but I'm only gonna go over a couple of them. There's one called the projectile launcher. As you saw earlier, there's the pistol. That's a projectile launcher. It launches bullets. 2, there's the rocket launcher. It launches a rocket projectile that can explode on impact. And 3, there's the trebuchet, which slings a rock-like projectile over long distances towards maybe, a castle. Oh, additionally, they can all launch a projectile. Let me show you right here. So they can all launch a projectile, and they can also all reload the projectile into them. So that's inheritance. For polymorphism, what happens is that in order for the projectile launcher, a projectile to launch from it, there's this base method right here, which basically it does some checks. It makes sure that the projectile can launch. So for example, it makes sure there's ammo and it's not in like a reloading state. Make sure it's initialized as well. During the base launch, it will subtract ammo. It will spawn a projectile somewhere at the barrel. It will use the first-person camera position. It's kind of a problem with first-person games where it's like the question of where do you launch the projectile at? Towards the center of the player screen, or something like that. Each of the projectile launchers will launch that projectile forward. There's like an event here, you don't have to worry about it. There's some camera shake that happens, and then lastly, if any of those projectile launchers are out of ammo, it will automatically start reloading. So that's how my game works for these projectile launchers. So the polymorphism kicks in for the pistol when it launches the projectile forward. What it does is that since the projectile of the pistol specifically uses a rigid body, that's how it will launch that projectile forward. It will get the rigid body component, and then it will add force forward. Pretty simple. For the rocket launcher, the way that it launches a projectile forward is that it will, first it has a reference to the projectile, which is the rocket. There's some more inheritance going on here, projectile and rocket projectile. Don't worry about that, I don't have enough time to go into that right now. And then it will initialize the rocket with a launch force, which is a float. And then the rocket will propel itself and do all of its launching here. So it's different from the pistol bullet in that way. So that's polymorphism. Oh, actually, sorry, I forgot. The trebuchet also has polymorphism by actually ignoring that launch procedure, the original launch procedure right here, and instead it overrides it and says, hey, I have a different way of launching the projectile, because the trebuchet technically doesn't launch the projectile forward. Kind of doesn't make sense. Instead, it slings a rock by using by releasing a counterweight, and that all of that is handled in this thing, in this little coroutine right over here. So that's why it needs to branch differently right here. So for example, for the trebuchet, it will release the counterweight. It will wait for the ball to be about 90 degrees before it gets launched in the air, and then it will launch. It will detach the ball, and it will do all the launching stuff. This is really messy, by the way, but that's okay, it works. It will shake the camera, it will send an event, it will detach the rope from the projectile, etc, etc. And yeah, so that's the polymorphism for all three of the weapons in my game. Now next on to the encapsulation. For the projectile launchers, each of them have properties. So for example, each of the projectile launcher, you can tell if it's reloading, if how much ammo to refill per reload that happens, and how much ammo counts. And basically what's happening for each of these getters and setters is that it's doing some validation checks and making sure that, like, let's say for example the ammo count, you don't want it to be negative. So it says, hey, something set the ammo count to be negative, so throw an error. You could also alternatively use throw system.exception, but I just opted for a simple debug log. Additionally, the game manager has encapsulation in the form of telling whether the game is paused or whether the game is over. And so the game being paused is used, for example, when the game is paused. Do this very briefly. Right, when the game is paused, time stops for everything. Right, the player should not move. The player should not be able to press buttons to switch weapons. The player should not be able to shoot their weapons. The player should not be able to look around. Anything on my character controller script that can accept player input basically uses this bool. Because if you, let's say you pause the game, the timescale is 0. However, the update loop for each of your scripts is still running, so my character controller is still accepting input here, and I don't want it to be switching weapons or anything. Oh yeah, sorry, this is kind of this is poor, but this is directly saying if if the time scale is 0, then do not move the character controller. Yeah, if it works, it works, you know. Anyways, there's another abstraction thing on the game manager. Let's see. If the game is over, basically it should prevent the player from opening up the pause menu, so I can open up the pause menu with escape. However, if I go ahead and do this, I can no longer press escape to open up the menu. I'm not sure if, I think I did not handle the case if the game over is open, so let me see this very quickly. I might have forgotten. Yeah, I forgot about that case. So in this case, I should have disabled the pause menu and just only keep this menu open, but that's okay. Lastly, there is abstraction. So there's one simple call to begin the game, and what it just does is it just sets the enemies to be on, and then the enemies will handle spawning by them automatically by themselves. The whole game, this might not make sense, because if you do play through the game, you will see a castle spawn, and you don't really see any castles spawning here. That is because all of that is handled through the initial talking sequence. When you talk with this little knight right here, you talk with Henry, and that's when they will finally call. You'll see right here, game manager begin game. But the whole castle sequence is handled right here. It's a little complex. Oh yeah, there's also other abstractions, so you can resume the game when you press like the escape button to pause and unpause the game. There's a button to restart the game, and to quit to the main menu. There's buttons that are hooked up to each of these functions, even though it says 0 references here. And that should be everything I can show you. So that's it for my month-and-a-half progress on this game. Thank you very much for watching. If you're still working on the junior programming, final assignment, good luck. Do not give up. If you've already finished, congratulations. Keep learning game development. Don't give up on game development. It doesn't stop here unless you decide game development isn't for you. Anyways, I will be seeing you around. Maybe you'll see another update, but most likely not anytime soon. I can't really make any promises. If I do make any updates, I'll post anything related to game development on this YouTube channel, maybe, if you want to follow. Like I said, no guarantees. This is my first post after all. I do kind of have a bunch of devlogs that maybe I could show off. Let me see. Oops, this one. I do have a bunch of devlogs that I could show off. It was actually pretty fun to create all of these and to record these and log these down. Maybe I'll post those. Anyways, always remember, make sure to always have fun developing, and that'll be all. Bye bye.